The dust on Velar never settled. It hung in the air like a red fog, coating everything and everyone who dared to walk through the wasteland. Day 1 stood at the edge of the spaceport, his rifle slung across his back, watching the diplomatic convoy assemble. He had taken worse jobs than this. Escort duty was simple: keep the clients alive, get paid, move on to the next contract. The Altheran guards moved with practiced precision. Their bodies caught the dim sunlight, reflecting it in strange patterns. They were crystalline beings, tall and elegant, nothing like the rough mercenaries who usually hired him. Day 1 had worked for dozens of alien species across the galaxy, but the Altherans were different. They lived for thousands of years, moved slowly, thought even slower. Everything about them spoke of ancient power and endless time. A younger Altherian approached him. Her crystalline form was smaller than the guards, with colors that shifted from deep blue to soft purple. As she moved, she carried herself with confidence, but there was curiosity in the way she looked at him. "You are the human mercenary," she said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. Day 1. "Correct," he nodded. "That's me. You're the package I'm supposed to protect." Package? She tilted her head, an oddly human gesture. "I am Princess Nari of the Altheran Empire. I'm traveling to negotiate peace with the rebel forces in the northern sector." Day 1 kept his expression neutral. "Princess?" The client had failed to mention that detail. Protecting royalty meant politics, and politics always complicated things, but the money was already transferred, and he never broke a contract. Understood. Stay in the middle of the convoy, follow the guard's instructions, and we in LT Unk and GTLL get you there safely. The princess studied him for a long moment. "You are very young. Most humans I have met are older." "I'm 32, Day 1 said. "A child," she replied, not unkindly. "I am 417 years old. To my people, I am barely an adult." Duan didn't respond. He had heard this before. To species that lived for millennia, humans were mayflies, burning bright and dying fast. It didn't bother him anymore. The convoy began moving at dawn. 3 armored transports rolled across the wasteland, kicking up clouds of red dust. Day 1 rode in the lead vehicle, scanning the horizon through his scope. The route took them through a canyon system, the most direct path to the negotiation site. It was also the most dangerous. Princess Nari rode in the center, transport through the communication link. Day 1 could hear her speaking with her guards about human culture. She seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about Earth, about human lifespans, about why humans fought so fiercely despite knowing they would die so soon. "Because we have to," Day 1 found himself saying. "We don't have thousands of years to fix our mistakes. We get one life, we make it count." Princess was quiet for a moment. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," he admitted. "But it's ours." The ambush came in the afternoon. The convoy was deep in the canyon when the first explosion ripped through the rear transport. Day 1's instinct screamed before his sensors did. He was already shouting orders as the second blast hit. "Contact multiple hostiles on the ridge. Get the princess to cover." Plasma fire rained down from above. The rebel forces had positioned themselves perfectly, using the canyon walls for cover. The Altheran guards moved to protect the princess, but they were slow, trained for ceremonial duty. More than actual combat, 3 fell in. The first seconds, Daewon leaped from his transport, rifle already firing. He moved like water, flowing from cover to cover, his shots precise and devastating, but there were too many rebels, and they had better weapons than intelligence had suggested. Someone had sold them out. The center transport exploded through the smoke. Daewon saw Princess Nari stumbling, surrounded by rebel soldiers. Her remaining guards were down. She tried to run, but a rebel raised a plasma cannon, the weapon charging with deadly light. Time seemed to slow. Daewon knew the angles, calculated the distances. He couldn't reach her in time. He couldn't shoot the rebel before the weapon fired. There was only one option. He ran. His legs pumped, his heart hammered, and he threw himself between the princess and the blast just as the plasma cannon discharged. The impact hit him like a collapsing star. Every nerve in his body screamed. He felt his armor melt, felt his skin burn, felt something fundamental inside him break, but the princess was alive. Behind him, Daewon hit the ground hard. His vision blurred, darkness creeping in. From the edges, he heard shouting, more weapons fire, and then something cool touched his face. The princess was kneeling beside him, her crystalline hands glowing with strange light. No, she was saying, no, you will not die. I forbid it. She pressed her palms to his chest. The pain intensified for a heartbeat, then began to fade. Daewon felt something flowing into him, something foreign and powerful. His body fought it at first, then accepted it. The darkness receded. What are you doing? He managed to whisper. Saving you, she said, as you saved me. The last thing Daewon saw before unconsciousness took him was the princess's face, her expression fierce and determined. Then everything went black, and he fell into a sleep deeper than anything he had known before. When the dreams came, they were not his own. He saw vast crystalline cities, felt the weight of centuries, heard songs that had no words, and through it all he felt a connection to something vast and ancient and alive, a thread that bound him to the princess in ways he could not yet understand. The connection would change everything. Daewon woke to the sound of crystal singing. It was a strange sound like nothing on earth, vibrating through the air and into his bones. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting pain, but there was none, only a strange tingling sensation across his chest. The room around him was enormous. Walls of pale blue crystal rose 30 ft high, refracting light into rainbow patterns. Through tall windows he could see towers stretching into a purple sky. This was not Velar. This was not anywhere he recognized. You are awake, a voice said. An Althuran physician stood beside his bed, her crystalline form a deep green color. This is fortunate. The princess has been waiting. Daewon tried to sit up. His body responded normally, but something felt different. He looked down at his chest and froze. Where the plasma blast had hit him, his skin was marked with crystalline patterns like veins of blue light running beneath the surface. What is this? He demanded. The physician touched the patterns gently. The resonance bond. When Princess Nari saved your life, she shared her essence with you. Your bodies are now connected. It is very rare, very sacred. Connected. How? Before the physician could answer, the door opened. Princess Nari entered, followed by 2 guards. She looked relieved to see him. Awake, Daewon, she said. I am glad you survived. I was not certain the bond would take, he stared at her. What did you do to me? The princess approached his bed slowly. I gave you part of my life force. It was the only way to save you, but there are consequences. I did not fully understand. The physician cleared her throat. The resonance bond ties your life forces together. You must remain within a certain distance of each other, or both of you will experience severe pain. Eventually, if separated too long, you will both die. The words hit Day One like another plasma blast. You're saying I'm trapped here with her? Not trapped, the princess said quickly. Not to me there isn't, Day One said. He swung his legs off the bed, ignoring the physician's protests. How do we break it? The princess looked away. The physicians say the bond cannot be broken, not without killing us both. It will fade naturally over time, but that could take decades, perhaps centuries. Day One felt rage building in his chest. He had not asked for this. He had done his job, saved a client, and now he was chained to an alien princess for the rest of his life. For a human, that meant his entire existence. For her, it was barely a moment. Take me home, he said. I cannot, the princess replied softly. You are on the Arthurian home world, and my mother, Queen Hine, has declared that you are bound to our family by blood, debt, and sacred law. You saved my life twice. You cannot leave. The door opened again. This time the presence that entered made everyone in the room straighten. Queen Hin was massive, twice the size of her daughter. Her crystalline form a deep ancient purple that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Power radiated from her like heat from a star. Leave us, the queen commanded. The physician and guards bowed and retreated. Even Princess Nari hesitated before stepping back. Queen Rin studied Day One with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. You are the human who saved my daughter. I was doing my job, Day One said. You threw yourself in front of a plasma blast. That is not a job, that is sacrifice. The queen moved closer. My daughter has bound herself to you. This was foolish, but it cannot be undone. You are now part of my family, whether you wish it or not. I don't wish it, Day One said flatly. That is not possible. The bond will kill you both if you try to leave this planet, then break the bond. There is no way to break it safely. Believe me, I have consulted every scholar in the empire. The queen's voice was hard. You will remain here. Human, you will be treated with honor, given wealth and status, but you will not leave my daughter's side. Day One felt the walls closing in. This was worse than any prison, at least in a cell. The walls were visible. I saved her because it was right, he said, not to be locked in a golden cage. Yet here you are, the queen replied. She turned to leave, then paused. You humans burn so brightly, but so briefly. Perhaps you will learn that some things matter more than freedom. When she was gone, Princess Nari approached Day One again. I am sorry, she said. I did not know this would happen. I only wanted to save you by trapping me, by keeping you alive. Her voice was firm now. You were dying. I made a choice. Perhaps it was selfish, but I made it. Day One wanted to stay angry, but he could see the guilt in her crystalline features. She had not meant to imprison him. She had only meant to help. How long have I been unconscious? He asked. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. His contracts would be void. His ship would be impounded. His entire life was gone. Reset to zero. I will find a way to free you, the princess said. I promise, but Until then, please try to understand. This is as difficult for me as it is for you." Dwayne doubted that she was home, surrounded by her people. Over the following days, Daewon learned the limits of his new existence. He could move freely within the palace grounds, but approaching the outer gates caused pain that doubled him over. The bond was invisible but absolute. The palace servants treated him with cautious respect. Some Altherans were curious about him, others resentful. Short-lived human bound to their princess. It was unprecedented. Scandalous. Princess Nari visited him daily. She tried to make conversation, to show him her world, to help him adjust. Daewon remained distant, polite, but cold. He spent his time searching the palace archives for any mention of breaking resonance bonds. He found nothing helpful. At night, lying in his crystalline quarters, Daewon could feel the princess somewhere in the palace. The bond connected them, a constant awareness of her presence. It was invasive, uncomfortable, like having someone constantly looking over his shoulder. He had spent 32 years being free. Now, in a single moment of heroism, he had lost everything that mattered, and the worst part was that he would do it again. If given the choice, he would still throw himself in front of that blast, because that was who he was. But knowing he was trapped because of his own values did not make the cage any easier to bear. 3 months passed like a slow death. Daewon had everything except the one thing he wanted. His quarters were luxurious, his meals prepared by the finest chefs in the empire, his every need anticipated by a small army of servants. But he could not leave. Princess Nari continued her visits. At first, Daewon barely spoke to her, but isolation wore him down. Eventually, he began to respond. She was curious about everything human, asking endless questions about Earth, about his life, about why humans rushed through existence with such intensity. "We don't have a choice," Daewon explained. One afternoon, they sat in the palace gardens, surrounded by crystalline flowers that chimed in the wind. "We get maybe 80 years if we're lucky. That's not enough time to waste, but you are always fighting," Nari said. "Always competing, always struggling. Why not simply exist peacefully? Because peaceful existence isn't living, it's just waiting to die." Daewon picked up a stone, feeling its weight. "You have thousands of years. You can afford to wait, to plan, to let things unfold slowly. We can't. If we want something, we have to take it now." Nari was quiet for a long moment. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," Daewon admitted, "but it's also beautiful. Every moment matters because there aren't many of them." The princess seemed to consider this. "I think I am beginning to understand why you hate being here. Every day trapped is a larger portion of your life than it would be of mine." Exactly. Despite himself, Daewon found he enjoyed their conversations. Nari was intelligent, thoughtful, and genuinely trying to understand him. She was not responsible for the bond or his imprisonment, and taking his anger out on her accomplished nothing. But the queen was another matter. Hin tested him constantly, summoning him for audiences where she questioned his worth, his intentions, his very presence near her daughter. She made it clear that she saw him as a temporary inconvenience, a short-lived creature who would die long before the bond naturally faded. "You are a novelty," she told him during one particularly uncomfortable meeting. "Nothing more. When you are gone, my Daughter will barely remember you. Daewon kept his expression neutral. Then why not let me leave? Because the bond would kill her. I will not risk my daughter's life, even for a few more years of yours. The political complications grew worse. All Theron nobles who visited the palace stared at Daewon like he was an exotic animal. Some were fascinated, others openly hostile. Rumors spread through the court that the princess had been compromised, that the human was manipulating her, that the bond was a human trick to infiltrate the royal family. A noble named Taeyang was particularly vocal. He had been courting Princess Nari before Daewon and LT Unk and GT's arrival, hoping to merge their two powerful houses through marriage. Now with the bond in place, those plans were impossible. You are a parasite, Taeyang told Daewon at a formal dinner, feeding off our princess's kindness. Daewon sat down his cup carefully. I didn't ask for this bond. If you know how to break it, I'm listening. The only way to break it is for one of you to die. Perhaps you should volunteer. Guards intervened before the confrontation escalated, but the damage was done. The court was divided, and Daewon was at the center of it. That night someone slipped a message under his door. It was written in rough Korean, clearly translated by machine. There is a way out. Spaceport. Dock 7, ask for Jiho. Come alone. Daewon stared at the message for a long time. It was obviously a trap, but it was also hope. And he had little enough of that. He waited until midnight, then slipped out of his quarters. The palace was quieter. At night, most of the crystalline inhabitants entering a meditative state that passed for sleep. Daewon moved through the corridors like a ghost, using skills honed over years of mercenary work. The spaceport was at the edge of the palace grounds. As Daewon approached it, the bond began to pull at him, a warning ache in his chest. He pushed through it, gritting his teeth. Dock 7 was dark. A small cargo ship sat on the landing pad, its hull scarred and patched. A human figure waited beside it, smoking a cigarette that glowed in the darkness. Daewon, the figure asked. Jiho. The man nodded. Heard about your situation. Rough deal. Got experimental shielding that might mask the bond's effects long enough to get you off planet. How much? Everything you've got, plus future considerations. Daewon had expected that. They moved quickly, Jiho guiding him into the ship. The cargo hold was cramped and smelled like oil and old metal. Jiho activated the shielding and Daewon felt the bond's pressure ease slightly. This might work, Jiho said, or it might kill you both. Either way, you'll be free. The ship's engines began to warm up. Daewon felt a moment of pure hope. Then the pain hit. It started in his chest where the crystalline patterns marked his skin. Then it spread, racing through his body like fire through dry grass. Daewon collapsed, gasping. Somewhere in the palace, he knew Princess Nari was experiencing the same agony. Turn it off, he managed to say. We're almost clear. Jiho argued. Jiho argued. Turn it off or we both die. Jiho cursed and killed the shielding. The pain eased slightly, but Daewon could barely move. Guards were already running toward the dock, alerted by sensors or by the princess's distress. Jiho's ship lifted off without him, disappearing into the night sky. Daewon lay on the landing pad, breathing hard as Altheran guards surrounded him. Princess Nari arrived moments later, supported by her attendants. Her crystalline form was Flickering, unstable, she looked at Day. One with an expression he couldn't read. "You tried to leave," she said. "Yes. Even knowing it would hurt me." Daewon forced himself to sit up. "I had to try. I can't live like this." The princess knelt beside him, ignoring her. "Attendance protests." "I understand," she said softly. "I would do the same, but now you know the bond is real. We are truly connected." "I know." Daewon replied. The pain was fading. But the truth remained. He was trapped. "Absolutely and completely. I will find another way," Nari promised. "A real way." "Will you help me?" Daewon looked at her. This alien princess who had accidentally imprisoned him and saw genuine compassion in her crystalline features. She was as much a prisoner of the bond as he was. Clea sensed divine again. "Okay," he said, "we work together." That night as Daewon lay in his quarters, recovering, he felt the bond humming between them, but it felt different now. Not quite like a chain, more like a thread connecting him to something he didn't fully understand yet. Outside his window, the city of crystal sang its endless song, and Daewon wondered if he would ever hear Earth's winds again. Scholars came first, old authorins, their crystalline forms darkened by millennia of existence, poring over ancient texts in the palace library. Princess Nari had assembled them at great cost, calling in favors and making promises, all to find a way to break the bond safely. Daewon attended their sessions, listening to debates conducted in languages that predated human civilization. The scholars argued about resonance, frequencies, life force compatibility, and quantum entanglement theories that would have baffled Earth's best scientists. After 2 weeks they had nothing useful to offer. "The bond is too strong," the eldest scholar explained, "and too new. Breaking it now would certainly kill you both. Perhaps in a decade, when it has weakened naturally." Decade? For Daewon, that was an eighth of his entire life expectancy. For Princess Nari it was nothing, but they kept searching. Nari spent hours in the archives with him, and slowly their relationship shifted. She told him about her childhood, about the weight of being the youngest daughter in an ancient dynasty, about how her mother's expectations crushed her as surely as any prison crushed him. "I envy you sometimes," she admitted one evening. "Your life is short, but it is yours. Mine stretches for thousands of years, every moment of it planned and controlled." Daewon understood more than he wanted to. They were both prisoners, just of different kinds. The attack came without warning. It was morning in the palace. Daewon was in the training grounds, working through combat drills to keep his skills sharp. He had just finished when the first explosion shook the ground. Blast came from the eastern wall. Massive detonation that sent crystal shards flying like shrapnel. Alarms wailed. Guards rushed toward the breach, but they moved with the practiced slowness of beings who had centuries to respond to threats. Daewon knew immediately what this was. The rebel forces from Velar had found them. He ran toward Princess Nari's quarters. The bond pulled him in her direction anyway, but he would have run there regardless. Through the chaos he saw Althurin, guards falling, cut down by weapons that should not have been able to penetrate palace security. There were traitors in the guard. The rebels had infiltrated them. Nari was in her study when he burst in. 2 of her personal guards lay dead at the door, their crystalline forms Shattered, the princess stood in the center of the room, surrounded by 3 armed rebels. There she is, one of the rebels said, the princess who cost us everything. Day One did not announce himself. He simply shot the first rebel through the back of the head. The second turned surprised and received a bullet through the chest. The third managed to raise his weapon, but Day One was already moving, closing the distance and driving his combat knife into the rebel's throat. It took 4 seconds. Are you hurt? Day One asked Nari. She shook her head, her crystalline form flickering with shock. How did you move so fast? Practice. Come on, we need to reach the secure rooms. They moved through the palace corridors. More explosions rocked the building. Rebel soldiers were everywhere, fighting guards, executing servants, destroying everything they could reach. This was not a kidnapping attempt. This was revenge. A squad of rebels spotted them and opened fire. Day One shoved Nari behind a crystal pillar and returned fire, dropping 3 before the others found cover. They were pinned down. Voice called out from behind them. Human, this way. It was Hun, a captain of the royal guard who had barely tolerated Duan's presence in the palace. He was gesturing toward a side corridor, his weapon drawn. Day One made a split-second decision and trusted him. They ran together, Hun covering their retreat with practiced efficiency. The captain moved differently than the other guards, faster and more aggressive. He had seen real combat. Where's the queen? Day One asked. Throne room. She's making a stand there with the elite guard. That's where we're going. They fought their way through the palace. Day One and Han fell into a natural rhythm, covering each other, moving like soldiers rather than strangers. The captain's respect for the human grew with every engagement. You fight well, Hyan said. During a brief lull, you too, Duan replied. Most of your guards fight like they've never seen real combat. Most haven't. When you live for millennia, war becomes theory rather than practice. Hyan reloaded his weapon. But some of us remember when theory wasn't enough. They reached the throne room to find it under siege. Queen Hin stood at the center, surrounded by her elite guard, but rebel forces were pressing in from multiple entrances. The queen's power was immense, her crystalline form blazing with energy, but even she could not be everywhere at once. Day One assessed the situation in seconds. The rebels were using human tactics, fast and aggressive, overwhelming the slow Altharan defenders. To beat them, he needed to think like them. Hyan, take half your guards and hit them from the left flank when they turn to engage. I'll punch through their right side and collapse their formation. Hyan looked at him, then at Princess Nari, then made his decision. Do it. The plan worked. Day One led his assault with brutal efficiency, using grenades and suppressing fire to create chaos in the rebel ranks. When they turned to face him, Hun's group hit them from behind. The rebel formation collapsed, but the rebel leader was still fighting. He was a massive Vthurian, heavily armored and wielding a plasma cannon. He had been saving his fire, waiting for the right moment. He aimed at Queen Hin. Day One saw it happening, saw the cannon charging, saw the angle of fire, saw that the queen was too far away for him to reach her in time. But Princess Nari was not. The rebel leader adjusted his aim at the last second. He was not targeting the queen, he was targeting her daughter, knowing that Nari's death would break the queen's legendary Composure, Daewon did not think. He simply moved. He hit Princess Nari like a tackle, driving her to the ground as the plasma blast scorched the air. She had been standing. The blast caught Daewon's shoulder instead, spinning him around and slamming him into a crystal pillar. Pain exploded through his body. His armor was gone, his shoulder a ruin of burned flesh and exposed bone, but he was still conscious, still moving, raising his rifle with one hand and putting 3 bullets through the rebel leader's face plate. The rebel fell and silence descended on the throne room. Queen Hin was the first to reach them. She looked at Daewon, bleeding on her throne room floor, protecting her daughter for the 3rd time. Her expression was unreadable. Why? She asked. Why do you keep doing this? Dwan coughed, tasting blood. Because it's right. The queen looked at her daughter, who was cradling Daewon's head in her lap, trying to use her essence to heal him again. The bond between them glowed visibly now, a thread of light connecting their life forces. I understand now, Queen Hin said softly. I have been wrong about you, human. She knelt beside them, adding her own power to Nari's healing efforts. You do not fight for payment or obligation. You fight because you are honorable, and I have dishonored you by keeping you prisoner. Daewon tried to respond, but darkness was creeping in. Again, the last thing he heard was the Queen's voice, speaking words that would change everything. I will find a way to free you, this I swear. Daewon woke to the familiar sound of crystal singing. His shoulder ached, but the pain was manageable. He had survived worse. Crystalline patterns on his chest glowed brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Princess Nari sat beside his bed, her form flickering with exhaustion. She had spent days channeling her essence into him, keeping him alive, while the physicians worked. When she saw him wake, relief flooded her features. You are impossibly stubborn, she said. Any reasonable person would have died twice by now. I'm not reasonable, Daewon replied. His voice was rough. I'm human. Queen Hin entered the room, followed by a procession of the Empire's greatest scholars. They carried ancient texts, crystalline data, tablets, and instruments that hummed with power. We have found something, the queen announced. It is dangerous, possibly fatal, but it is a chance. The eldest scholar stepped forward. In the early days of our civilization, before we became what we are now, resonance bonds were common. Our ancestors developed a ritual to transform the bond from a physical tether into something else, a connection of awareness rather than proximity. Meaning, Daewon asked, you would always be able to sense each other, to know when the other is in danger or distress, but you would not need to remain close. You could travel anywhere in the galaxy, and the bond would persist but not constrain. It was more than Daewon had hoped for. What's the catch? The ritual is agonizing for both parties. It requires restructuring the bond at a fundamental level. While you are both conscious, many died attempting it in ancient times, and even if you survive, the connection will be permanent. You will always be aware of each other for the rest of your lives. Daewon looked at Princess Nari. What do you think? I think you should be free, she said quietly. Even if the ritual kills me, you should not spend your life as a prisoner. That's not what I asked. Nari met his eyes. I'm afraid, but I am more afraid of what keeping you here will do to you. Every day I see you dying slowly, like a star losing its light. If the ritual can free you, we must try, Queen. Hin watched the exchange with ancient, knowing eyes. There is another matter we must discuss. Day one, you have saved my daughter 3 times now. You have proven your honor beyond question. If you choose to undergo this ritual and survive, I offer you a choice. You may leave with my blessing and with wealth, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your days, or you may stay not as a prisoner or bondmate required by fate, but as a free man who chooses to remain. The offer stunned Day One into silence. After months of imprisonment, after fighting so hard for freedom, the Queen was simply giving it to him. Why, he asked. Because true honor demands it. Hen replied, I kept you prisoner because I feared for my daughter's life, but you have proven that you would die to protect her regardless of bonds or obligations. Keeping you here dishonors the very sacrifice I claim to value. The ritual was prepared for the next day. Day One spent the evening walking the palace gardens one last time. He had hated this place, but he realized now that he had also learned to appreciate its beauty. Princess Nari found him watching the sunset over the crystalline city. Are you afraid? She asked. Yes, Duan admitted. I've been in combat hundreds of times, but at least in combat I can fight back. This ritual I just have to endure. I will be with you. We endure together. They sat in silence for a while, watching the light fade. If you survive, Nari said carefully, what will you do? Day One had been thinking about that question for days. I don't know. For months, all I wanted was to leave. But now that I can, I'm not sure the galaxy holds anything better than what's here. You have come to like it here. I've come to understand you, he replied. You, your people, what you value. It's not so different from what humans value. You just have more time to express it. Nari was quiet for a long moment. I know this complicates things, and I know you may not feel the same way, but I wanted you to know before the ritual. Case something goes wrong. Day One turned to look at her in the fading light. Her crystalline form seemed to glow from within. I have feelings for you too, he admitted. I've been fighting them because I thought they were just a result of the bond or Stockholm syndrome or some kind of survival instinct, but they're real. Then why do you want to leave? Because I need to know I can. I need to know that if I stay, it's because I choose to, not because I have to. Does that make sense? Yes, Nari said, it makes perfect sense. That is very human of you. The ritual began at dawn. Day One and Princess Nari stood in a circle of ancient symbols, surrounded by scholars chanting in languages older than human civilization. The air itself seemed to vibrate with power. When the ritual truly began, Day One understood why so many had died attempting it. The pain was beyond anything he had experienced, beyond anything he had imagined possible. It felt like every cell in his body was being torn apart and reassembled, like his soul was being rewritten at a fundamental level. Through the bond he felt Nari experiencing the same agony. But he also felt her determination, her strength, her refusal to break. She had endured for 400 years. She would endure this too. Day One drew on his own human stubbornness, that refusal to quit, that had kept him alive through a dozen impossible situations. He held on second by second, breath by breath, and then suddenly, Day One collapsed to his knees, gasping. The pain was gone, replaced by an odd sense of completeness. he could still feel Princess Nari, but differently now. Not as a chain pulling him back, but as a distant presence, like a star he could always navigate by. It worked. One of the scholars breathed. The bond has transformed. Queen Hin helped her daughter to her feet, then offered her hand to Day One. He took it and she pulled him up with surprising strength. You are free, the queen said. Bond will no longer constrain you. You may go anywhere in the galaxy. Day One tested it, walking toward the door. Bond shifted but did not tighten. He could leave. He could actually leave. Princess Nari watched him, her expression carefully neutral. She held out a small crystal glowing with her colors, a piece of my essence. We can communicate through it across any distance. If you ever wish to speak with me, simply hold it and think of me. Day One took the crystal. It was warm in his palm. The ship leaves in 2 hours, Queen Hin said. You should prepare. Day One went to his quarters and packed the few possessions he had accumulated. It did not take long. He had come here with nothing, and he would leave with little more. The wealth the Queen had promised was already loaded on his ship. He stood in his room looking at the crystalline walls one last time. He had hated this place. He had fought to escape it, but now with freedom in his grasp, he found himself hesitating. What was waiting for him out there? More mercenary contracts, more battlefields, more violence and loneliness, or could he choose something different? Day One walked to the ship, passing through the palace one final time. Servants bowed to him, guards saluted. He had earned their respect through blood and courage. The ship waited on the landing pad, its engines warming. Jiho had been right. Either he would be free or he would be dead. Turned out he was free. He climbed the ramp, entered the cockpit, and sat in the pilot's seat. The controls were familiar, comforting. He could launch right now, be off this planet in minutes, be truly free for the first time in months. His hand hovered over the launch controls. Through the bond, he felt Princess Nari somewhere in the palace. She was not watching him leave. She was giving him space, respecting his choice. Day One thought about everything he had experienced here, the fighting, yes, but also the conversations, the slow understanding of a culture so different from his own, the connection with someone who saw the universe on a time scale he could barely comprehend. He thought about going back to the life he had known, and he realized that he had changed too much. That life would not fit him anymore. Day One powered down the ship's engines. He found Princess Nari in the garden where they had watched the sunset. She looked up, surprised as he approached. I thought you left, she said. I did, Day One replied. I went to my ship, sat in the pilot seat, and realized something. Freedom does not mean running away. It means choosing where you belong. And where do you belong? I don't know yet, but I think I want to find out. He held out his hand. I'm staying, not because I have to, but because I want to. Is that okay? Princess Nari took his hand. Her crystalline fingers were cool against his skin. That is more than okay. Years passed. Day One became an advisor to the Queen, helping bridge the gap between the Altheran Empire and humanity. His insights into human psychology and tactics proved invaluable as the two civilizations began formal diplomatic relations. He and Princess Nari grew closer, their relationship deepening from friendship into something more. It was complicated, certainly. She would outlive him by thousands of years, but They had both learned that life was not measured in years but in moments. When asked why he had returned after fighting so hard for freedom, Day One always gave the same answer: freedom means nothing if you cannot choose to give your heart away. I saved the princess because it was right. I stayed with her because it was my choice, and that makes all the difference. In the end, his human life would be remembered in the eternal archives of the Althuran Empire, not as a prisoner or a bondmate or even a hero, but as the man who taught an ancient civilization that true freedom and true loyalty were not opposites. They were two parts of the same truth, and it took a short-lived human to show them that truth. The galaxy was vast, and Day One had chosen his place in it. He had chosen freely, and that freedom made his choice meaningful. That was what it meant to be